Yeah. All right. All right. To explain this, Sampo is criminally underrated in this game right now. I think he's arguably one of the most important must-build characters in the entire game, especially going forwards. And I'm going to tell you why. Sampo is the king of damage over time. If you've played any other gacha games like I have in the past, damage over time is usually a very viable strategy to defeat bosses, which are usually the hardest content in turn-based RPG strategy type of games, like Star Rail is. A great example is a game called Summoner's War. A damage over time team became so important to clear the strongest content that you had to build one. The game even gave you free stuff to do so because it was so important to clear the harder content. You just couldn't do it with normal units. And Sampo is essentially that guy in Star Rail. And this is why he's not A tier. He's not at B tier, C tier, S tier, D tier. He's Sampo tier. He is his own tier because he's so OP that he can't be classified with anyone else. So going to his skills, we got to talk about this. His basic attack deals wind damage equal to 50, 100, 110 of his attack to a single enemy. That's just normal. His skill, though, wind damage equal to 28, 56, 62% of his attack to a single enemy, and further deals damage for 4 extra times, with each time dealing wind damage equal to 28, 56, 62 of his attack to a random enemy. So you're getting, what, 5 attacks off of his skill? With like pretty good damage too. Like that stuff ramps up at, let's say 56 times 5 is like 270 damage. That's quite a lot of scaling on his skill. His ultimate deals wind damage equal to 96, 160, 172 of his attack to all enemies, with a 100% base chance to increase the target's DOT taken by 20, 30, and 32 for 2 turns. This damage over time taken is really important to his kit because this is what really makes him the cornerstone of the damage over time team. Going to his talent, his attacks have a 65% base chance to inflict wind shear for 3 turns. Enemies inflicted with wind shear will take wind damage over time equal to 20, 52, 57 of his attack at the beginning of each turn. Wind shear can stack up to 5 times. This is where all of his damage is coming from. 65% base chance to inflict wind shear, 3 turns. Now, at 52%, stacking up to 5 times, if you get lucky, that's 1 skill. And with the damage over time debuff, essentially, that you would give them with the ult, this damage is going to skyrocket out of control on him. Moving to his traces, his first trace extends the duration of his wind shear caused by his talent by 1 turn. This is really good in longer boss fights where you're going to have to allow them to have more turns essentially and play a little tankier. You're able to get rid of a lot of the RNG by keeping it for an extra turn, so you'll always be able to keep your wind shears at 5 stacks. Going to his second trace, his ultimate additionally regenerates 10 energy. This is really good for him just anyways because he gets his ultimate back more, which is really important to keep that debuff going. And his third trace is enemies with wind shear effect deal 15% less damage to him, which basically makes himself kind of his own tank in a way. 15% damage reduction is quite a bit actually. And his minor traces are attack and attack. So he just wants to build a lot of attacks so that his wind shears deal a lot. His Eidolons is where he gets really stupid. His first one gives his skill another attack. So that's 6 attacks now on his skill. And his Eidolon 2 is when an enemy with wind shear is defeated, there's a 100% base chance to inflict wind shear equivalent to the talent's wind shear. I believe on everyone, or at least the people beside, like the enemies beside who you defeated. Obviously, Eidolon 3 is just upgrade. Eidolon 4, when his skill hits an enemy with 5 or more stacks of wind shear, they immediately take 8% of the current wind shear damage. So now he's a more productive attacker. If you're in some sort of combo with Welt and stuff to kind of cheese out turns, he can now deal a ridiculous amount of damage every time he attacks. And think about this too. When his skill hits an enemy with 5 or more stacks of wind shear, you could do one skill, maybe proc all wind shears, and then the second time you use your skill on that enemy, you're going to hit them 6 times for 8% of the current wind shear damage on top of your own skill damage. Your skill's going to be hitting like an island at that point. Eidolon 5, again, just skills. And Eidolon 6, his wind shear damage multiplier increases by 15%, which is just a big damage increase for him. He's absolutely insane. And while, like, on paper, it doesn't seem super crazy, and a lot of people's excuse is like, well, why kill them later if you can kill them now? Because what if you can't kill them now and you have to kill them later, you know? So a good example of this is a video Mtashed posted 1 day ago. I believe it was later in the evening yesterday, where he used a level 20 Sampo with a level 1 light cone, and I believe no or very uninvested relics to clear, I think it was World 5. World 5 or World 6 in what's it called? Simulated Universe. And it's just like the dude was dealing a ridiculous amount of damage completely uninvested, and I don't think anyone realized that he had this much potential. So if we get over to kind of the boss fight here,
turn, then I can win.
So you see he's already got the 5 wind shear stacks and a bunch of other debuffs and stuff on him, using a team of Sampo, Welt, Bailu, and his Clara, and his Sampo's dealing all the damage so far. Like 15,000 damage every time the wind shears proc. It's absolutely insane.
Before she gets a turn, I think we can win it. All right.
Like, she is weak to wind,
one of my healers,
to be fair, but
I'm gonna push back that
it's
turn meter
still a lot of damage for someone who's weak to a level 20 this late into the game.
That's too bad. I don't get the revive. I didn't get the revive because of that kill. Let's see if we can still do it. I think with better RNG, we might be able to do this. We're gonna do it.
He gets all 5 stacks of wind shear, and the increasing damage and all the debuffs from, I believe, building Nihility in the
40-something
the blessings. The damage just gets insane.
We won.
Like, I am gonna admit,
we actually won with all these debuffs.
I am going to admit that a lot of his damage is coming from Nihility path and the blessings wherein. However, his damage is still not negligible outside of building into him essentially in the simulated universe, because there's still going to be a lot of content, like your weekly boss fight, for example, where he's going to be extremely useful. And this is with a team that is largely not built around him to the extent that it could be. An example, Clara probably doesn't need to be there if his Sampo was built and could tank shots and not get sent immediately down to like almost dead in one weak hit from the boss, right? If his Sampo was actually built, he would be able to actually use a team built around him. Something like Sampo, Serval, Himiko with her trace unlocked, Hook. Who else? I guess you could, maybe if you needed speed, if you wanted to kind of loop speed, you could do Asta and Dan Hung. You could just kind of rotate speed on them to get a bunch more stacks of different debuffs. You could run something like that. You could run something akin to like a Bronya to increase your attack stat on him so that you're dealing even more wind shear damage, or a Ting Yun for the same reasons. And eventually here in, I believe, patch 1.2, according to spoilers, Kafka's banner is going to release, and Kafka is essentially the queen of damage over time. She deals shock, or I believe, similar to Serval, and what ends up happening is she compounds so well with Sampo that they are arguably going to be the best, like, synergistically strongest team in the entire game for probably a really long time, unless something else comes out of the woodworks. We could even look here at Kafka. Where's she at? Right here. And Kafka, never mind, no info yet. But from what we've heard from leaks, is that Kafka can very, very, very easily benefit from Sampo. Sampo is so good at all content. His AoE is really good. And for everyone with a wind shear, he takes less damage. So he's got a lot of staying power kind of in the grand scheme of things with your whole team. He's got a lot of staying power too because he gives himself his own essentially bulk off of his skills. Lots of debuffs, massive damage. It's insane. And in Simulated Universe, you basically win with him. If you do Nihility Path, it gets stupid really quick, and you can pretty much cheese the entirety of the game with his wind shears. In the rest of content, there is an argument to be said that he's probably A tier, maybe like low S tier, S minus tier or something. But I really do think that in majority of content, once we get Kafka, players who have both Sampo and Kafka, he's going to be the best because he's going to increase the damage of your whole team by 32% right here, right? That's a team-wide 32% damage boost just on his ult for 2 turns, can trigger a bunch of people's damage at once. It's just like no other character can buff that hard for the whole team. I guess Asta can get to that amount of attack stat, but that's not damage. That's just the attack stat. Increasing the target's damage over time taken is just a simple damage buff, or essentially a debuff to the enemy is what it's considered a debuff to the enemy, but it's essentially a team-wide damage buff if your teammates use damage over time effects, and it can get really, 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 really stupid. So yeah, essentially anything that's a boss fight, he's going to shred, and anything that's got like multiple enemies, he does very well in, just as an overall pick. That's why I guess he's ranked up here as S rank on 3+ targets and A rank is 1 target. I don't believe that. I believe against 1 target he should be considered S rank, and he should be at least an S rank character, if not close to Seela in power across all gameplay, because like Seal is really strong and can burst down enemies, but for enemies she can't. Sampo does really well. And that's not even talking about how he's probably one of the best breakers in the game. His ability to break toughness on enemies weak to wind is unparalleled in the wind attribute, and one of the best, probably top 3 across the board. I think Asta is a really good one, and I believe Serval is another really good one for Electro, and there's a couple others that are good here and there for being breakers, but he is pretty much the best in wind by a landslide, and probably top 3 in the entire game overall. And it's just like the amount of value he brings to a team that can properly utilize him is crazy. And you get Serval for free. You get Asta for free. Like, I'm just thinking out loud here. If you pull Sampo, you have pretty much a workable damage over time team that will clear pretty much the entirety of Simulated Universe, as long as you take the Nihility Path, because the buffs Nihility Path give are stupid compared to the other ones, because Nihility Path is giving debuffs. None of the other paths do that. They add damage or stats and stuff. Nihility Path is adding debuffs that then stack with your own. Your damage skyrockets. It gets So insanely stupid. And again, we saw that boss fight. Level 20 Sampo. It's level 20 Sampo, clearing some of the harder content for players to face in the game currently. That is why I wholeheartedly believe that Sampo basically is in a tier of his own. Is he good as a cookie cutter unit? Yeah, he's a really good breaker, best in wind. He's probably A rank at least for that. He's got really good damage. But when you are really able to utilize him, he's just in a league of his own. He's got the highest damage in the game. You could argue, built around him, he has the highest damage in the game. And that is well reflected in the DPS rankings. Copyright go to preedwin.gg, right? He is E0, pretty high. I mean, he's only, what, a little above half, yeah, like 57% of the damage of a Sela. And that's obviously Sela without having the resurgence procs. And this is done hung with perfect rotation. And yeah, and like all these guys like perfect or minimums or whatever. But this is also just Sampo. This is not Sampo with actual like play behind him. Because against a boss, properly built Sampo against a boss in a DOT based team is going to destroy everything. Because these are all simulated encounters essentially of what I believe to be either the singular character or like a cookie cutter buffer team just to get individual power. And Sampo, while having a bunch of individual power, is not going to be all of the power, especially when Kafka comes out. Because Kafka is going to use Sampo as her pedestal to really shine. But Sampo's really doing all the work behind the scenes. I think we all can kind of agree on that. And in his 3 targets damage, he actually jumps up quite a bit, even though it's like 54%, because they're giving Clara so much benefit of the doubt. What the hell? Right? This is like everything goes perfectly for Clara that she gets this much damage. It's stupid. But Sampo's basically on par with Physical Trailblazer and very close to Serval and Himiko for AoE damage. And this is, again, probably unoptimized. I don't know exactly how they did Sampo. I've kind of browsed around here and seen kind of how they're doing them for the most part. But, you know, Sampo's is really good. Again, with Serval, he buffs Serval. Himiko, he kind of buffs Himiko. He kind of buffs Hook. When Kafka comes out, those two are going to be an unstoppable force. And Sampo is going to easily jump in the tier list. I'm just like, preemptively, Sampo tier. Easily. Especially in the simulated universe. But like, Kafka comes out, he's going to be insane. And they say too, they do the simulation in Forgotten Hall. It's like, yeah, but Forgotten Hall is pretty much a hard-ass boss that, for the sake of the argument, Seal is going to cream anyways. Because it's not as hard as simulated universe. It doesn't feel like. People have already cleared floor 14 of Forgotten Hall. People have not finished all of the simulated universes. I believe there's more than 6. I believe the highest someone's gotten is 8 out of the as of this time. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what I've seen online on Twitter and stuff. But it's like utilizing simulated universe buffs. He is pretty much the best because Nihility buffs are OP. When Kafka comes out, he is the single best support for Dot's team, and Dot's team is going to gain a lot of prevalency. And overall, he's just a solid guy. Like, he's in contention, single target damage with Su Shang and Clara. Like, he's pretty close to like these guys who are used a lot. And in 3 targets, he's literally the best 3 target wind. He's the best 3 target wind. and he's the best windbreaker. Like, there's a lot of value in him. Building him, you're not going to regret it. And I just wanted to get this video out there as soon as possible because I saw that video from MTashed of his level 20 Sampo doing stupid things with stupid debuffs, with stupid nihility blessings, and it was like, none of the other characters get that in Simulated Universe. And at the very least, you're gonna need a team to farm the highest levels of Simulated Universe. If Sampo is that, and you just pick Nihility every time and run Sampo and he just clears content really quickly too, then yeah, you're going to want that because you're going to be farming Simulated Universe for your relic orb things, the extra 2, right? Because those are really important. So no, Sampo's OP. Sampo tier. For sure. Alright, that's everything. Sampo.